Hello my beautiful people, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to another eyeshadow palette ranking video. Today I will be ranking all my 10 eyeshadow palettes from NABLA that I currently have in my collection. I hope you enjoyed this video, find it entertaining and helpful. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Eve and I love all things beauty. If you're not yet a subscriber, I invite you to join my YouTube family. And without any further ado, let's dive into my NABLA eyeshadow palette rankings. Have 10 NABLA eyeshadow palettes in my collection, and before we get into the actual ranking, I want to say a small disclaimer that all these palettes I've purchased with my own money and this video is not sponsored. NABLA eyeshadow formula is one of my favorite formulas to work with. That's why I have so many palettes from the brand. You will hear me expressing a lot of love towards all these palettes. All the 10 palettes that are currently in front of me, I love them all. I did also film the reel for this makeup look. If you like to see how I created this eye makeup look, you can check out my Instagram reels. Most of these palettes that I'm going to be talking about today, I do have more swatches and detailed posts on my Instagram, as well as reels with inspirational look tutorials. And I also have a playlist dedicated to NABLA eyeshadow palettes. Some of them like more dedicated videos, and some of them they're just featured eyeshadows and different type of videos. So I'll also have that playlist linked for you here in the description box if you are interested to check it out. NABLA eyeshadow palette formula is one of my favorites because every palette has different textures introduced. They're not all the same, not in the same combination, but I noticed a consistency from one palette to another. The Cutie palettes, which are the 6-pan palettes, the formulas are slightly bit different from her larger format palettes, and I will get into those details as well. NABLA eyeshadow palettes are all made in Italy and they're cruelty-free and vegan, if that's something you are interested in. Now let's get into ranking. On the number 10 spot, I do have a palette that ended up here because of how unique its color story is, and it's a very specific. This is a Cutie Midnight palette from NABLA. When I purchased this palette at that time, I really wanted to add something blue curated eyeshadow palette to my collection. And when I saw this palette, I was already familiar with eyeshadow formula and I said, yes, this is the one. And I wasn't disappointed by all means. Also, in each of these Cutie palettes, there is a mirror on this side. There are different textures in this palette. You have simple mattes, you have satin, you have fully foiled shimmers, and then you have this beautiful shade, a shimmer, like a full color shimmer. However, it also has some glitter particles in it. So you definitely have a variety of textures to play with. And this is what, to my opinion, makes this formula so special. None of these shades cause me any difficulty, very little fallout on the pickup. However, when you work with the formulas on your eyes, there's really no fallout. Everything blends really nicely, everything packs really well, and everything adheres to your lid really well. The blue smoky eye look that I created with this palette is to this day one of my favorite looks that I created. I love all the shades that are here and I really love the quality of this palette. However, the reason why it's on the last spot is because the story is very, very curated and I don't reach for it as often as to my other palettes. On the spot number 9, I have a Wild Berry Cutie palette. Same format of the palette here, and the formula is slightly bit different from the previous one. We have 3 mattes here, a fully foiled shimmer right here. This shade is a topper that gives you like that wet lid effect, or you can also use it as a topper for already existing shades on your lid, and it just layers really beautifully. It does have that creamy feel to it, so it's just so easy to work with. This formula here is very interesting. It's cream to powder. It does have a little bit of texture when you pick it up, but it does go on skin really nicely. It does remind me a little bit of the Natasha Denona cream to powder formula. Like I said, it does have more texture when you pick it up and when you look at it. However, on the lid, it goes very nicely and smoothly, and then there is a beautiful color payoff. All the shades also are true to color. Even though it looks like it is a monochromatic palette, there's still a few different looks that you can create out of this palette. And again, the reason why I ranked this on number 9 is because of its curated color story. However, I definitely would use this one a little bit more often than the blue one. And the spot number 8, I have a Platinum Cutie palette. Same format for this eyeshadow palette. However, we have 2 mattes here, true matte, 4 shimmer shades which are fully foiled, fully pigmented. The silver shade is one of the most beautiful silver shades in my entire collection. There's nothing like this. Yeah, this is a palette that I want to reach out for like New Year celebration evening, because these shimmers are just out of this world gorgeous. It's definitely the palette that requires some type of very big celebration. Even though I am a huge neutrals lover and I love all my neutrals boring palettes, however, this is far from boring. This is definitely, like I said, a very, very festive palette due to its very vibrant and thicker formulas of shimmers. So that's why I rank it a little bit lower in my rankings, because I only reach out to this eyeshadow formula on a special occasion. On the spot number 7, I do have a palette that is unfortunately no longer available. It looks like it has been discontinued, and this is a Coral Cutie palette. Same format, however, again, we're seeing different layout of formulas. So here in this palette, there are 2 mattes. There are 2 different topper shades. They're very reflective and they have that wet lid effect. That's really my favorite. And there is a really nice full shimmer shade right here. This is more of a satin shade. This palette screams spring for me. This palette is definitely unique in the layout of textures. I really love these 2 toppers that are included. It's like no other palette really. Even though the formulas are so different in textures, they still blend into each other so effortlessly and layer on top of each other beautifully. Very unfortunate that this palette is no longer available. And the spot number 6, I do have a palette that is very natural to me to like, because I'm a huge neutrals lover, and this is a side-by-side eyeshadow palette. This is a neutral eyeshadow palette. However, I do really like the gradient. Whenever I look at any palette, this is my personal preference, I always look for the gradient of shades from lightest to darkest, and here we have that cream white matte shade down to black, we have brown, we have gray, we have taupe shades. Also, this palette has a variety of shimmers, different browns, you have more pinky rosy tones, you have champagne beautiful inner corner. I also really enjoy this bottom row here. This is just one look for me. I also do have a reels on my Instagram featuring this eyeshadow palette. The palette also has a really nice large mirror. It also has different formulas. As far as all mattes, they are all the same, like traditional mattes, and no cream formulas here. Some toppers, I think 1, 2, and 3, these are toppers, and then we have a regular shimmers, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, these are regular shimmers. Some of these eyeshadows just apply with a finger. So this is why I decided to rank this palette midway, is because it's a little bit application sensitive. On the spot number 5, I do have a palette that has a very, very unique breakdown of shades. This is a Nude Cutie palette.
Oh my god, I'm just creating so much mess here. Can I not poke my fingers into this gorgeous eyeshadow?
This is the only eyeshadow palette that I own out of my entire collection, or out of all the NABLA palettes that I have, that has all cream to powder formulas in the palette. Even though it is very neutral palette and shimmers look pretty basic, something that you've already seen many times in other eyeshadow palettes, it doesn't seem so unique at a glance. However, the formula, that's what makes it special in this palette. There are basically 3 shimmers and 3 satins here. Like, some of these shades are a little bit more textured when you pick them up with the brush, but they go on skin very, very beautifully. That cream formula just blends into your skin so beautifully. I do not at all regret buying this palette. This actually was my latest addition to my NABLA collection, and it is long lasting, nothing creases, nothing fades throughout the day. With this formula, I would suggest to use a little bit denser brushes and just blending like the same way you would do with Natasha Denona. Number 4, I have a palette. Color Story is just so appealing to me and so inspirational. And of course, the quality is not lacking. Here I have the Dreamy palette. I just simply love this Color Story. I love the mattes, the rose tones, the purples, and a little bit of a touch of neutrals. This is what I also enjoy very much. This is the palette that I use today for my look. This is the palette that is the most traditional, I would say, out of them all, out of these NABLA eyeshadow palettes that I'm talking about today. Here you have traditional mattes, traditional shimmers, and these shimmers are very soft. They have the beautiful reflect. This eyeshadow right here is a little bit more textured and has a little bit more of those glitter particles. Formula of all these eyeshadows are very consistent throughout this palette. I did not experience any duds at all. Everything blends easily and effortlessly. Nothing creases, nothing fades throughout the day. Just very lovely formula to work with. I will share also a little secret with you here. If you ever loved the retired palette Anastasia Beverly Hills and Jackie Aina. So Jackie Aina's palette has been retired and no longer is available. However, some of the shades are very, very similar. And if you're missing that palette, you might want to look into this one. If you like a more simple look, or if you like a little bit more complex look, layer shades on top of each other, all these shades just blend so easily together. This is one of my favorite palettes, not only out of NABLA, but generally. On spot number 3, I have a palette that you could probably already guess if you've been here on my channel. This is also a palette that I recently have featured in a few of my videos. This was a part of my Shop My Stash rotation. So here on spot number 3, I do have a secret palette. This is a color story that I just absolutely love. The packaging itself is really beautiful, but the color story, it's just so appealing to me. That's why I rank this palette on my top 3. Really love how many different looks you can create out of this. I personally find this eyeshadow palette and story very inspirational. Even if you are a beginner and you look at this palette, it might seem a little bit like colorful and you don't know what to do with this. There is a quite good amount of neutral shadows here. Maybe you are a neutrals lover and you are used to neutrals, but you would like to experiment a little bit with color. This palette is wonderful to start with because some of these shimmers, they're buildable, but yet they can be sheared out. So you can just apply it with your finger and just do a little wash of color, or you can spray your brush and get a little bit like brighter pigment. Some of these jewel tones. Again, the structure of this palette is a little bit more traditional. You have traditional mattes that perform just so well. They also perform true to color. On spot number 2, I do have a palette that has a special place in my heart. So you may have heard me talk about it so many times. Many of you can already guess what this palette is. On spot number 2, I have the Analog Cutie palette, where I'm a huge neutrals lover. I love my neutrals, but not all neutrals are made the same. Even though at first this palette seems like, okay, you got some browns, you got some golds in there. What's so special about it? This palette is far from being basic or boring. I've said that before and I will say it again and again and again. There are only 6 pans in this eyeshadow palette. However, every single shade here is so unique. This palette also has a variety, by far the highest variety of formulas here. So we have a very traditional matte, then there is a cream matte. This is that beautiful duochrome shimmer shade that kind of is performing like a topper. You can definitely layer it on top of other shades. It does have the coral gold shift to it. This is a beautiful fully foiled gold shimmer. This specific shade here does perform like a topper. It does have little glitter speckles in it, but it also has a dark base. You can use it on its own. Just a combination of different textures here, and everything just performs so beautifully. This palette is very, very special in my opinion. And now we got to a number 1 spot, the palette that is very, very special to me. This was a love from a first application. This is just a palette that might not seem to be like wow at first time when you look at it. However, it is just a wonderful palette to have, and especially if you are a neutrals lover like me, you would definitely understand why I'm so hyped. So on the spot number 1, I do have Read My Mind eyeshadow palette. I love this palette, you guys, so much. It's a little bit larger palette, and of course you have so many neutral shades, warmer tones. You have some of the cooler tones here, and then the top 2 rows are a little bit rosy tones. I love how this palette is organized. It goes by rows. It also goes in squares, so that's how you can combine and play with the eyeshadow looks. Even though it's a larger format palette, and if you're newer to larger palettes, this would be easy for you to navigate and create looks with. This eyeshadow formula is a little bit more traditional again. However, it does have some interesting formulas regardless. The mattes are all traditional mattes and they perform beautifully beautifully with no issues. There are no duds in this palette. Again, some of these shimmers are like fully foiled shimmers, and 3 of these shades are toppers. So I wanted to show you these shades right here. They're just so beautiful and reflective. This shade number 5 is a duochrome shade that has, let me see if you can see it. Look how beautiful and reflective this is. I don't know if the camera picks up, but it has gold, pink, and a little bit of green. Just such a stunning shade. I've also featured this palette multiple times on here on my channel, and I also really love that this cool tone row does not have grays, even though at times I do enjoy grays, but I've said that before and I will say it again, that sages are a new gray. I think that these sage tones are very flattering. They're a little bit softer than your grays. So if you love the neutral palettes, if you love neutral tones, but you're not necessarily into grays because you may think that they're a little bit too harsh on you, these are so much softer. To my opinion, to my liking, this palette is a perfect neutral palette because you do get your warm, your cool tones, and then I personally consider burgundies neutral. Like, these shades might be a little bit more colorful to some people, but I personally find it very neutral. To my opinion, this palette is such a gem. So this sums up my NABLA eyeshadow palettes ranking video for today. Let me know if you own any NABLA eyeshadow palettes and which one is your favorite. And if you enjoy watching this video and would like to see more content about NABLA eyeshadow palettes, I will leave the NABLA playlist here for you at the end of the video and also in the description box. Thank you so much for watching and hanging out with me today, and I will see you in my next videos. Bye.